Good afternoon and welcome to the WEIM Governing Body General Session Meeting. Please note that all audience lines are muted until the public comment portion of the call. We will give you instructions on how to enter the queue at that time. With that, I'll turn the call over to Chair Rob Konziolka. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December Governing Body General Session. I'm Robert Konziolka and Chair of the Governing Body, and I would like to thank you for your attendance and interest in today's meeting. To begin, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Corporate Secretary Roger Collington for roll call.
Thank you, Chair Konziolka. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Chair Konziolka.
I am here.
Vice Chair Gardner.
Here.
Member Campbell.
Here.
Member Decker.
Here.
And Member Prescott.
Here.
Thank you, Governing Body. We have full complement of members and a quorum. We may proceed. Back to you, Chair Konziolka.
Thank you. The first item we have, as usual, is public comment. If there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda, please signify that you would like to be let in on the on the chat line, and Silas will give instructions on making those comments.
If you would like to make a public comment, please place yourself in the queue by pressing the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you are called into our phone-only line, please dial #2 to enter the queue. There are no comments in the queue at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the decision on the October general session minutes. Roger?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Can I have a motion to approve the WEIM Governing Body General Session minutes from October 25, 2022? Do I have a motion?
This is Anita, so moved.
Thank you, Anita. A second?
Second.
Thank you, John.
That was
Chair
Andy.
Andy.
That was Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Must have been the echo. Or lack thereof. Okay, thank you. Chair Konziolka, your vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gardner?
Aye.
Member Campbell?
Aye.
Member Decker?
Aye.
And Member Prescott?
Aye.
Excellent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Before I move on to the next agenda item, I'd like to make a few opening remarks. I'd like to start with a personal comment and request. From the end of November to the beginning of the new year is a time set aside for thanks and for giving. It coincides with the shortest days and the darkest nights. Please consider how you can bring some light into the life of a family member, a friend, or someone in need. A simple act of kindness or help can make a difference. So now moving on to business. On today's agenda, we will start with the CEO report. And then after the CEO report, we will receive updates on the latest activities and plans by the BOSSer and the RIF. The nominating committee is entering their busy season and will be active over the next 6 months. We will take time to select a governing body representative to serve on the 2023 nominating committee. Next, we will hear from staff on the third quarter benefits of the WEIM, as well as benefits to date. The ongoing benefits of the WEIM continues to receive a lot of positive coverage, and benefits and the benefits report at today's meeting presents the significant ongoing and increased value the WEIM participants receive. This meeting will mark the first time we receive a report by the WEIM governing body market expert. Our market expert, Susan Pope, will be addressing the resource sufficiency evaluation enhancements phase 2, which is a decisional item at tomorrow's joint meeting of the Board of Governors and the governing body. The report by the market expert will only be provided at today's general session. Some additional comments regarding the market expert. At the last governing body general session, I commented that the governing body had expected to receive their first report from the market expert on resource sufficiency. However, since the RSEE2 decision item had been deferred and the proposal was being revised, we would not have the presentation, but we would still have the presentation material that was developed by the market expert posted for visibility, which we did. The website still reflects the previous presentation and is posted separately from today's meeting material. The updated presentation material by the market expert is posted under today's meeting material. And please note that some minor revisions were made since the last week's posting. A clean and redlined version are shown. Then lastly, we will hear the latest schedule for addressing the 4 big initiatives that have been over a year in the making. DAME, EDAM, governance changes by GRC, transmission service, and market scheduling priorities phase 2, or as everyone likes to say, wheel throughs. This concludes my opening remarks. Our next agenda item 3, is a report from the CAISO President and CEO, Elliot Mainzer. Elliot?
Thank you very much, Chair Konzioka, Vice Chair Gardner. I was going to start with an initial apology for my relatively hoarse voice. I took a couple of 13-year-olds to the 49er game this weekend, and apologies to any Buccaneers fans, but it was pretty exciting. And then, of course, consistent with Murphy's Law of remote work, just as we're kicking off the meeting, of course, the leaf blowers are showing up. I think that's part of the modern world. So hopefully the noise is not too distracting in the background, and it will hopefully cease here momentarily. But it is thank you for your opening comments. This is a very consequential time for the CAISO and our many partners across the West. I have a number of issues to touch upon here today, so I'm going to get right to it. Of course, we're now about 3 months on from the summer heat wave in early September. I think there's been a lot of reflection, a lot of discussion of the lessons learned from that report. And of course, back on November 2nd, our market analysis and forecasting team released our summer market performance report for September 2022. I think many of the lessons we've discussed in various forums, obviously the additional capacity that was on the system, a tremendous amount of communication and coordination across the West and within the state agencies, the emergence of very high visibility to demand response. I think all of those certainly contributed. I think for me, the key thing that I wanted to try to emphasize today is again, our commitment to transparency. I think the report was a very, very thorough analysis. It's very important to me, and I think to my entire team, that we try to make good information available, particularly after edge cases like the summer heat wave, where we can learn a lot about system operations, not only the opportunity to highlight those things that went well, the energy imbalance market, the imports, the movement of power across the West, the new learnings, but also to make sure that we lean in on those things that we learned. And we certainly, there's some lessons learned about energy exports and around the resource efficiency evaluation. And with a battery storage fleet over 3,000 megawatts in size, some learnings about the dispatch of batteries and about price formation. So I think it was a very galvanizing event in some ways. Certainly, we're very pleased that we're able to work through it, but we're now right back to work, getting ready for next summer and being prepared for what is likely to be, I think a new normal of load and temperature variability like we saw last year. Of course, here in December, there are many other parts of the country that are heading into winter with some significant reliability challenges. We're fortunate here at the ISO to, I think the ISO managed grid is in good operating condition. We're currently experiencing, typical moderate fall weather with a big bunch of recent early precipitation building with the snowpack, but no real significant adverse weather-related impacts to the bulk electric system so far. Of course, I think as we know, we've seen very, very high natural gas prices in the West, leading to higher electricity prices in the system. We haven't seen any material operational consequence from those higher prices, and our systems are, I think, well set up to absorb the price variations. But I think we are digging into the fundamentals, really trying to understand exactly what's driving the dynamics. We've also been having a series of meetings with SoCalGas and the other gas pipeline companies to to strengthen electric gas coordination in preparation for peak demand season. And while we are certainly able to absorb the price swings in gas with our settlement systems, the physical challenges on the pipes can be a bigger issue. So that's something that we're keeping a very close watch on at the moment. Of course, back on November 9th and 10th, we were very fortunate to host for the first time in 4 years our stakeholder symposium. Thank you, Chair Kanzioka, for your actual opening with Chair Bhagwat of the Board of Governors, and to the other members of the EM governing body who were either able to attend in person or virtually. It was wonderful to see you there. It was just a fabulous event. We had 880 people in person. Obviously, folks were very excited to be back. I think that the opening comments from Secretary Granholm were much appreciated. The CEO panel, I think, just was able to demonstrate the tremendous interest, and I think the real momentum we're seeing around the extended day-ahead market. I think all the conversations around resource adequacy, the collaboration in the regulatory community really strong. Of course, good chance to sort of do a little bit of a summer retro, and to think also about technology innovation, which is going to be continue to be important to all of us across the West as we continue to look for dispatchable capacity and deal with the consequences of a rapidly retiring fleet of traditional generations. So there's a lot of work there. It was a great event. Really appreciated the energy and the focus, and a deep thanks again to Joanne Serena, the whole team that organized it. Joanne, I think she's still, the whole team's ready to relax. They're thinking that we're going to get back on our 2-year cadence. I think I may advocate for quarterly symposiums, right, Joanne? Maybe not, but it was that fun. We'd like to do them as often, but probably on sort of a regular biennial schedule again. Turning to EDAM, of course, this last week itself has been just a really big moment for EDAM. Last week on the 7th of December, we released the final proposal. And again, this has been a process that I'm just deeply appreciative of the partnership. You know, there's so much happening in the West, so many different initiatives, so much taking the attention, but just the focus and the commitment of time that our many customers and stakeholders from across the West contributed to the EDM process, I think just allowed us to come out the other side of that with, I think, a really, really strong proposal. And so we released that on the 7th, of course. We were obviously extremely pleased on December 8th to see the commitment of PacifiCorp to EDAM. It's obviously very consequential for us. They were, of course, the first EIM adopter. I think tremendous leadership on their part and a real commitment. I think a real strong belief that we share in trying to optimize transmission and resource diversity across the broadest footprint. So certainly linking the 2 largest transmission systems together is an important step. And we were going to continue to keep our head down and try to make EDAM a market option that works for as many of our EIM partners as possible. And so you, of course, will be briefed out on the EDAM proposal tomorrow. We'll be bringing it back to the governing body and to the Board of Governors in early February for the formal decision. And of course, I also wanted just to note that this week, actually just last week, we also published our final proposal for our Transmission Service and Market Scheduling Priorities Initiative, otherwise known as the wheel-throughs. And we have a stakeholder meeting scheduled later this week on the 16th with comments due back in early January. And we will also plan to take that initiative to the governing body in an advisory role and to the Board of Governors for a decision at the February 2023 joint general session. I will note that back on November 18th, the Committee on Regional Electric Power Cooperation, otherwise known as CREPC, hosted a webinar on a new study titled the Energy Strategies Extended Day-Ahead Market Benefit Study, estimating savings for California and the West under EDAM market scenarios. This was a study that used largely the same methodology and built on the work that was done back in 2021 with the state-led market study. And it was just another look at the potential economic and environmental benefits of an extended day-ahead market covering a significant fraction of the West. Just a couple of things I noted in the CEO report. Total operational savings from the West would be up to $543 million per year, which would be sourced from reduced power production expenses, which would represent a 4.5% decrease from the status quo. I also note on the emissions side, an extended westwide day-ahead market would reduce CO2 emissions an estimated 1.5% or 2.92 million metric tons a year. So again, I think we're continuing to process these results. Really appreciate the work of Energy Strategies on that study, and looking forward to continue to socialize that work as we move towards approval of the EDM proposal and continue to work with our partners to broaden its footprint. I will note, of course, last week also on December 7th, the WEIM Governance Review Committee also posted its extended day-ahead market governance draft final proposal, and will be providing a briefing to the board and the governing body on December 14th. So tomorrow, the GSDRC members have been just working so hard, communicating with their sectors and other interested stakeholders to address the remaining refinements of their proposal. And we're so thankful for the incredible amount of time and collaboration that they've expended over the past several years on this issue. This is such an important issue for so many of our partners across the West. And I think this represents a significant evolutionary step in governance, and hopefully something that will be workable for our critical mass of partners. I did want to note just a few other items. One of the things that we've been working on really hard within the ISO is really a prioritization of our many, many initiatives, and just really making sure that both our control center operators and our customers are as prepared as possible when we are releasing new technology upgrades. And quite frankly, we've really sort of redoubled our commitment to quality and readiness. And we made a tough decision earlier this month, actually to move the launch of two of our initiatives, the hybrid resource phase 2B and the flexible ramping product improvements. We decided to remove the fall release, which was originally scheduled for December 1st. We've moved it out to February 1st, 2023. And we just did not feel that we had sufficient readiness, both internally and with customers, to launch both of those initiatives. And it's just absolutely essential that user acceptance testing and the customer readiness are as strong as possible. So I will say probably one of the lessons, I think we probably waited a little bit too long, honestly, or we got right up to the deadline before we decided not to launch. I think going forward, we're trying to give folks a little bit more advanced notice. I think that'll be one of the learnings for this. But certainly the commitment to prioritization and quality has to be rock solid. I did want to note that the functionality will remain available to market participants in the testing environments for continued testing and readiness activities, while we work with all impacted entities to ensure that customer readiness for the February 1st activation is solid. Also, the central procurement entity feature of their fall release is not affected and will activate as planned on January 1st. And when we get into the new year, we intend to make our final decision for going live on February 1st by mid-January, just to make sure we allow for sufficient notice time and awareness. So not a perfect outcome, but a good learning. And I just wanted to reiterate again that the absolute commitment to readiness. Just in terms of a couple final things, just more broadly, I also wanted to note, simultaneous with the significant progress of the WEIM Governance Review Committee, we are also working very hard on the assignment that we received from Chair Chris Holden in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. That is the Assembly Concurrent Resolution 188 report that we are working on with the other balancing authorities in California. That's the report that summarizes existing relevant studies on the impacts to California of a regional market, as well as discussing the collaboration engagement among Western states on the future of such a regional operator to maximize consumer savings. This is an important precursor to what's likely to be a legislative push in California legislature next year for broader governance reform. And the report is almost, the first draft report is almost complete. We intend to post that. I believe the target date is the 21st of December. We'll give folks a couple weeks to take a look at that. And then in early January, we'll have a public call to request public input, consolidate that input. And then our assignment is to have that delivered to the legislature by the end of February. And we'll look forward to following up with Chair Holden in the early new year to start thinking about the timing and the coordination, the choreography of that important initiative. Last note I had on my CEO report, also we had released back on October 31st, the nice closer, the WEIM this year, we reached an all-time high of $526.5 million in quarterly benefits during the third quarter of 22. It's a big number. That positioned the EIM to have exceeded $3 billion in cumulative benefits by the end of this year. It's just remarkable and just a testament to the power of regional cooperation and coordination. And of course, the benefits achieved in the third quarter were certainly attributed to strong hydro, high natural gas prices experienced throughout the quarter, as well as the heightened demand of electricity prices for the summer due to the extreme heat across much of the West. But again, market performed extremely well. So as we turn now to the holidays, and I think everybody ready for a little bit of breather before what's likely to be a very busy and productive 2023, I wanted to first of all let you know tomorrow we will be putting out a retrospective blog on the entire year, all of the major accomplishments of the ISO and our many partners. It's just been an extraordinarily productive and dynamic 2022, and we're just really looking forward to 2023. And thank you all for your personal engagement, for your commitment, for the time, for the partnerships that you're helping us build across the West, and just really the support that you give us every day to do the important work of reliability and collaboration across the West. So thanks again, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you, Elliot. And my one comment here is you will not hear this associated together very often, but thank you and congratulations on delaying the implementation. We fully concur that it is not right, and you want to do everything to make certain it is. There has been feedback in the past that really it's not just the CAISO, but it's everybody else as well, making certain that they're ready for these changes. And I know that it is greatly appreciated. So again, not going to hear kudos for delays very often, but this one here, if it's maybe the right thing. I'm going to check and see if there's any questions from the governing body member. And I do not see any. So El, before I let you go, I did watch part of that San Francisco 49ers game. It's really interesting. It was a real beatdown of Tampa Bay, but I think importantly, you have a new quarterback. He's an Arizona product, but more importantly, he was last in the draft pick, and this was his first start. And it just goes to show that sometimes almost anything is possible.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks again to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is agenda item 4, the Body of State Regulators update. With us today is Commissioner and Chair Haley Williamson of the Nevada PUC, and she is the boss or vice chair. So Chair Williamson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and what a nice segue. Anything is possible. Thanks, Rob. As you mentioned, my name is Haley Williamson. I am the vice chair of the Body of State Regulators, as well as the chair of the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. Chair LeVar is unable to attend today's meeting, so I'm filling in for him to provide this update. First, a few BOSSR members spoke last month at the California ISO Symposium on November 9th and 10th, where they shared their views on market design, governance, and the level of regulatory collaboration needed across the West to successfully unlock the benefits and maximize cost savings for electricity customers. The BOSSR would like to take this opportunity to thank the California ISO for hosting the successful event, and the BOSSR looks forward to continuing the regional market expansion dialogue with all the entities across the West. Next, I'd like to provide the governing body with an update on the BOSSR's activities on the WEIM Resource Efficiency Evaluation Enhancements Phase 2 initiative. The BOSSR has been following the initiative since 2021. In January of this year, the BOSSR provided comments on the Phase 1 final proposal, emphasizing fundamental principles of the WEIM RSE. While the BOSSR did not provide comments during the CAISO stakeholder process for Phase 2 of the initiative, the BOSSR is pleased to find that the second revised final proposal is generally in alignment with the BOSSR's recommendations on the RSE design that we provided in the EDM initiative. However, the BOSSR is aware that there are several pieces of the WEIM RSE design that need further refinement and continued stakeholder feedback in the future, specifically with regards to the development of the penalty framework. Additionally, the BOSSR is currently reviewing the final proposal of the EDM market design. As the governing body knows, the BOSSR has been following this initiative closely and providing consensus comments on specific components of the design that impact the greater West-wide footprint. I'm pleased to say that the BOSSR was able to achieve consensus and submit comments throughout the stakeholder process on specific topics, including the EDM RSE design, as well as transmission availability. As we're in the process of reviewing the final proposal, the BOSSR acknowledges that the CAISO attempted to incorporate the BOSSR's comments, along with other stakeholder comments, into its final proposal. We appreciate the CAISO's efforts on the various issues And we will continue to participate and engage until the implementation of EDAM. Finally, we look forward to providing the governing body with our final comments on the initiative next month. The BOSSER is also reviewing the GRC's governance proposal that was posted last week. Overall, the BOSSER is generally supportive of the direction the GRC is moving on governance in EDAM, and we look forward to continuing our participation with the GRC in further refining the proposal over the next month. Again, we look forward to providing the governing body with our final comments on governance, along with other EDAM market design comments. The BOSSER had its final meeting of the year last Friday. We discussed the WEIM RSE Enhancement Phase 2 Initiative, EDAM Market Design and Governance, and our 2023 outlook on the various initiatives that impact the WEIM and the EDAM. The next monthly meeting that BOSSER has will be on January 13th of 2023. At this point, I just want to thank you all again for allowing me to provide you with an update on BOSSER activities. As more CAISO initiatives begin to intertwine with the regional nature of the Extended Day Ahead framework, the BOSSER is mindful of the workload these policy initiatives create as they are nearing a Western EIM governing body and ISO Board of Governors joint decision in the coming months. The BOSSER would like to take a moment to thank the governing body for your thorough oversight in each of these important policy initiatives. And we look forward to continuing to provide substantive feedback and comments on these issues. And with that, I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season.
Chair Williamson, thank you so much. We appreciate your updates and your coverage of these items. I'm just going to check and see if any of the governing body members have any questions. I do not see any, so thank you so much. We appreciate your time and involvement, and we really do appreciate when BOSSER provides comments on any of the initiatives. So thank you. Our next agenda item is agenda item 5, which is an update on the Regional Issues Forum. And with us today is Vijay Satel, the RIF Chair. And Vijay, there you are.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Chair Kanzioka. Thank you. And hello, everybody. I'll start the end of the conversation by saying, hope you all have a wonderful holiday season moving forward. The RIF has done quite a few things this year, and I know some of my colleagues are on the call, so they can help remind me if I missed something. But I want to give 4 updates specifically for all of you. 2 of them are extremely important as they have implications for 2023. But I just want to go back and circle to November 8th. We had our in-person last RIF meeting, which is a pretty big success with 40 plus people in the room. And I want to thank CalISO staff for doing a phenomenal job for setting up a in-person RIF meeting right before the CalISO symposium. And I think we had Member Decker, we had Member Campbell, we had Chair Kanzioka also in the room, conversing with Elliot Mainzer, and it was a pretty active conversation around 4 topics. One was what's on your mind kind of idea, and Elliot Mainzer and of course you, Chair Kanzioka, had a lot of interesting, thoughtful ideas and questions to share about the future with the EDAM and the interaction with the RA programs. But you also touched upon the stress conditions, which Elliot brought home pretty well, and how CalISO managed the situation in coordination and communication with members. More importantly, we had 3 other items, which was 2 other items. One was market conditions and dealing with how the overall stress conditions worked out with a presentation from the Department of Market Monitoring, which is very helpful. And it was an eye-opener for many attendees in the room that don't attend the RIF meetings regularly. There was another valuable conversation thanks to our colleagues from the RIF liaisons in the EIM entity group on SEAMS alignment in terms of the RAP with the California Resource Adequacy Program. For those who would like to really have a chance to go back and listen, that was a very thoughtful, engaging back and forth dialogue to discuss the RA initiatives. And then Doug Boccioni also helped lead a transmission conversation. So we had a pretty eventful, packed November 8th RIF agenda item, closing out with some of you engaging in an open dialogue, which was very powerful for the RIF liaisons to really engage in understanding how do we participate with you all in future. So, and I think Member Campbell and Chair Kanzioka had some ideas, and I definitely know ex-Chair Decker has often brought up some ideas, so we've kept them all in mind. And we have some good news to share. Second item would be we submitted formal comments on the RIF, on behalf of the RIF to the EIM GRC proposal. I'm sorry, to the EDAM GRC proposal that went back to the CalISA staff. So the RIF members, liaisons worked together, and we thankfully had consensus on some couple of ideas and thoughts, and we've submitted that as well. The third item I would like to bring up is the RIF liaisons are all in consensus that we would like to move forward with the RIF roundtable concept. The RIF roundtable concept is to be figured out a little more in the mechanics next year. I've also got advice from CalISA Legal, thanks to Holly Taylor, is that if there be a quorum being met with the EIM governing body members, such a roundtable would be part of the EIM governing body meeting. And if so, it will be a publicly held meeting, which is obviously not a problem. But the RIF roundtable would then be part of the listed public meeting agenda. And we would have an agenda item in there, and we would be updating you with issues or bringing up questions and concerns or thoughts to discuss. If we were to have a roundtable that is beyond that in our own RIF public meeting, we want to work through the mechanics of that. And please bear with us through the next 3-4 months, and we should have a bit of a game plan on that matter. One more item I would like to bring up is, I think you're going to be hopefully happy to not see me often give these updates this year, as we have a leadership change next year coming up. So thank you, Member Prescott. I saw you smile. You picked up on my sarcasm. Is that we will have Josh Walter take over the chair role, and we will have hopefully a new vice chair coming in. I will still be on the RIF liaison team, and it's been a privilege being on this group. And I've learned a lot, and I hope to impact more in my official role in the public interest sector perspective. One of the things we are thinking a lot about is the attendance and communication of what we do. One idea we are debating and we will be thinking about is 2 of our meetings would be in person, 2 would be virtual. But the ones that would be in person, we would like to, and we're making an open request, is that they be piggybacked before or after, ideally before a governing body meeting or GRC. So we're going to try to figure that out and see how we play that out. So it's maximize the attendance, make it more worthwhile, but also justify the travel for the RIF liaisons as well. So I just want to give that heads up on what we've been thinking and where we are. I don't think of anything else I can say. So this is our RIF update, and I'm happy to take any questions from anybody, please. Member Gardner, I think, and then
okay,
Member
Anita would like to comment or question.
Please, please.
Okay. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Anita. Yeah, Vijay, thanks so much for the update. It sounds like the RIF has been really busy, and of course, want to acknowledge the comments that the RIF submitted, consensus comments for the first time on the GRC's proposal. Really appreciate hearing from the RIF. I think that's a valuable addition to the suite of stakeholder comments that we receive, and just really want to show our appreciation for pulling that together. My question for you is actually focused specifically on the RIF roundtable concept, and I realize that the RIF is still going to finalize details of this in the new year, but I would love for you to provide just a little bit more color around what you are expecting for the roundtable, basically what you're expecting to accomplish, how the RIF would look differently using a roundtable approach as opposed to how it currently is operating.
So I should clarify the semantics here. The RIF will continue to work the way it does. That is not changing.
Okay. Gotcha.
There would be, if we agree on 1 or 2 items that are deserving a roundtable kind of open dialogue and bringing different perspectives of the liaison sectors to the table, which maybe are not often easily heard, if there are any. We have that roundtable concept, but that was a big active discussion item in our liaison coordination call, just in fact 9 days ago, or a week ago, is that we want to make sure what we bring to the EIM governing body in the public meeting is one where we frame the issues or we bring updates and or want feedback in ways that you can openly discuss and throw ideas. So we have not fully fleshed out the nature and the nuance of what we bring into the governing body meeting. That's a public meeting where the roundtable discussion will be, but we definitely have an understanding that we want these roundtable kind of forums, and it is still a RIF meeting when it is not in the EIM governing body meeting agenda. And when it is in the EIM governing body agenda, what do we bring for getting feedback? I think that's the nuance that we have to work out. But we've definitely agreed on having a roundtable kind of style, and maybe one of our RIF meetings will be a complete RIF roundtable. That could be just what it is. So it doesn't change the RIF forum. I mean, the RIF, it doesn't change the RIF character, the nature, and the operating guidelines. It would be in the form of a roundtable where folks can join in. Roundtable. That's kind of the spirit of what we're thinking. But you bring up a good point, and I'll take it back as a homework item, is when we are part of the EIM governing body meeting agenda, what are we bringing to the table and what are we expecting in the dialogue? We'll try to work through that more clearly.
Okay, and I would just, again, as you guys are fleshing this out, if this concept truly is a concept to be implemented during publicly noticed governing body general session meetings, I would just encourage a great deal of coordination with Rob, with myself, whoever it makes sense to do that coordination with as we consider potential changes to meetings going forward. But really appreciate all the work you're doing on that. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think Chair Consiglio knows we've been keeping up. I've followed up with him before, with Chair Decker in the past. We want to maintain that dialogue and we want to make sure that the RIF roundtable is not a surprise coming up at you in any way. If that's the concern, that will not happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you. I think my liaison teams will agree with me, and that'll be part of my resignation that I'll make that request known. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just, Jennifer, my apologies for not seeing your hand sign. That the yellow and the white just didn't stand out for me, so I'll look more closely. Next is Anita, and then John, you'll be after Anita.
So Vijay, I was so appreciative to see some comments come from the RIF in regard to the GRC. And, as I've said a number of times now, we really do want to hear your voice. And I was really pleased to see that you guys found some commonality and were able to provide comments. I hope it was a growing exercise for the RIF, and that the RIF will get more comfortable in that process, and that we'll see more of that going forward. But I really want to applaud the effort that it took to get that consensus and to provide the comments. So please share that with the RIF.
Member Decker, I will make it known to them very well. I think it was an amazing teamwork, especially by a couple of lead RIF liaison members who took the lead in writing, and then we chimed in. We've also come to a comfortable agreement that in future, we may not always have consensus. The only thing we know is the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Other than that, everything is debatable. So I think we will have situations where we have unanimity issues and disagreements, and we would like to put that on paper. But I'm very, very impressed and grateful with the RIF liaison team that is willing to open-mindedly discuss and think through. And we're hoping next year that we'll be able to put comments out where we disagree and where we agree. And where we disagree, who are the sectors that disagree? So you have some clarity of the perspective and the orientation.
That's excellent. We're really well done.
Thank you. I'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. John?
Yeah, real quick, I know we're a little short on time and my audio is not the best, but two things I wanted to add with what Anita just said, how appreciative I was to get the comments from the RIF. That helps us in decision-making, and that effort is noticed and appreciated. And then finally, just to thank you for your service and your leadership on the RIF, Vijay, and all you did to move it forward, and look forward to having Josh take over, but still having you involved. Thank you.
Member Prescott, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
So Vijay, I'll end with Jennifer and Anita and John said what needed to be said. And yes, we appreciate your leadership. And thank you. And we do look forward to working with Josh in 2023.
Yes, I think you may have to suffer my presence one more time in January, February. But that's after that, we'll have the leadership change happen and we will be updating you together in the next meeting. But thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. So our next agenda item is agenda item 6, which is the decision on the WEIM governing body nominating committee representative. Just a short background on this. As a body, we had made the decision and approved the vice chair being the nominating committee representative. We did that a year and a half ago at a time we thought that would be a good balance of responsibilities between the governing body members. Little did we know things would change. And so as Jennifer became our vice chair, she was also being our market expert liaison. And the governing body did not believe that that was a really good balance of responsibilities, and felt that we needed to make certain that Jennifer did not get overloaded and we had a better balance of responsibility amongst the members. So this process of selecting a new nominating committee member is to formally change what we had approved a year and a half ago. So with that, Roger, can we go ahead and address the motion that we need to develop?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, did you select, or was there going to be discussion on your nominating committee member? Who did you want?
I'm going to allow a governing body member to make a motion here to make a suggestion for the motion. I see Anita.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I got some garble for a second there.
Oh, my apologies.
Not yours. Yeah, so let's go ahead and with the nominating committee, or excuse me, let the governing body, if anyone has any suggestions or wants to make a recommendation, and then we can move forward with the process.
So, and we would like to, or I would like to designate Andy Campbell as our representative on the nominating committee. He just has been through the nominating process. He would be a really good representation at that table, as well as really understanding the changes that have gone on with the GRC and what's going to be required of somebody coming in. So I would actually move that Andy Campbell be our representative for the nominating committee.
Okay, and do we have any other suggestions or comments on that?
I'll just comment, I'm happy to serve in that role.
And this is something that I will support.
Okay, well, let me move forward with a motion. Well, I'll give an opportunity. I haven't heard from John or anyone else, but I'm presuming silence is at least acquiescence. So let's move that the WEIM governing body designates Andrew Campbell as the WEIM governing body representative on the nominating committee effective December 13, 2022 until June 30th, 2023, or such time thereafter a successor is designated. And let's go with the official. Can I have a motion for that? Is that you, Anita?
That was me. And I think I heard Jennifer second.
And Jennifer was second.
I did.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and take the vote. And Andrew, you are entitled to vote, but if you say no, we will be chagrined. Member Campbell, your vote?
Yes.
Member Decker?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gardner?
Yes.
Chair Konzioka?
Yes.
And Member Prescott?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes, and congratulations, Andy.
Roger, thank you. And governing body members, thank you. So, Andy, I know you're going to have a busy 6 months with the nominating committee. Next up on our agenda is agenda item 7, which is the WEIM benefits report for the third quarter of 2022. And with us today for the intro is Anna McKenna, who is the Vice President of Market Policy and Performance. And for the presentation, Guillermo Batista Alderete, the Director of Market Analysis and Forecasting. So Anna, I guess you will do the introduction.
I will do a very brief introduction, as very much a pleasure. Good afternoon, Chair Konzioka and Vice Chair Gardner and governing body members, as well as the general public and my colleagues. I have the pleasure of merely introducing Guillermo Bautista Alderete today. He will be sharing with you our latest WEIM benefits and market update. And with that brief introduction, I will turn it over to Guillermo.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the Western Energy Imbalance governing body. This briefing covers specifically the Western Energy Imbalance market for the Q3 of 2022. Next slide, please. Q3 saw a significant amount of benefits in the amount of $526.5 million. This is the largest benefit observed since the inception of the Western Energy Imbalance market. There are several factors contributing to this level of benefits. First, we have obviously additional entities participating in the market since the Q1 of 2022. More EIM entities enable more economic transactions, not just for the new entities added to the market, but also to the existing entities. Second, we continue to see a robust amount of transfers among areas, which in the end reflect economics of the wider area. Third, the economic transfers also result in economic displacements of higher value energy. When an energy transfer is realized, a cheaper energy transfer effectively displaces more expensive generation in the receiving area. This will lead to benefits in the way of cost savings. And lastly, gas prices remain high for over a year now. I think it's about 1.5 years that they have remained high. And this consequently will be reflected in higher electric prices, which are one of the inputs used to the determination of the EIM benefits. Next slide, please. With the $526 million accrued in the Q3, the total cumulative benefits of the EIM market is about $2.9 billion. However, I'm happy to announce that we have estimated the benefits for October 2022, which is about $100 million. Therefore, as of October 2022, the cumulative benefits has passed the $3 billion mark. This level of gross economical benefits is a testament to the value and effectiveness of the Western Energy Imbalance market to be able to meet supply and demand at the least cost across the entire footprint. Next slide, please. Another benefit of the Western Energy Imbalance market is the avoided energy curtailments. If not for energy transfers facilitated by the market, some renewable generation would be curtailed. The portion in dark reflects the curtailments in the CAISO system, while the light blue represents the avoided curtailment due to the Western Energy Imbalance market. The dotted trend reflects the cumulative avoided curtailment. As we can see, avoided curtailments continue to accrue over time. For the Q3 of this year, the volume of both curtailments and avoided curtailments are relatively low due to the seasonal conditions. Next slide, please. A significant contributor to the Western Energy Imbalance benefits is transfers, and the transfers is across the balancing areas. Transfers enable access to lower cost supply throughout the footprint. It can also be possible that a transfer is realized between two areas that are not directly connected by means of wheeling through, and the Western Energy Imbalance market is able to maximize these opportunities. We've been tracking the volume of transfers and wheels through realized in the market since the inception. These figures illustrate the flow of transfers among balancing areas. The size of the stream flow reflects the relative volume of the Western Energy Imbalance transfers. On the left-hand side, we have the balancing areas where the transfer is coming from. And on the right-hand side, we have the balancing areas where the transfers are going to sink. Areas on the left are exporting, while areas on the right are importing. This is a very intuitive way to illustrate the interaction of the balancing area through the transfers. As you can see, there are many streams from and to the balancing areas, which is just a reflection of all the opportunities of economical transfers that can happen in the wider footprint of the energy imbalance market. Next slide, please. Although transfers can be quite dynamic, they are estimated on 5-minute basis. They tend to have certain patterns, at least through the seasons. This plot illustrates the hourly profile for each month of the quarter for the transfers across the different areas. A positive value represents a transfer import coming into a given area. Typically, CAISO area tends to export a significant volume of energy during the midday hours. And you can see that with the negative values dipping in the middle of the day. And then switch to become an import for the peak hours. Other areas, such as bank, SRP, TID, will be the natural counterparties taken on the other side of the transaction. In Q3, we see this trend very well defined. This is the time of the year where we have full production of solar. Therefore, this profile of the transfers is very marked. Next slide, please. Overall, prices. Prices were high. On average, they were over $75, and in some cases, they exceeded $125 on average. And as you can see through the quarter, they trended up as we came deep into the most critical conditions of the summer. That was September. As a reference, we also showed external bilateral prices for the key points of Mid-C, Palo Verde, and COP. And they are shown with little markers for each of the months as a reference. On average, the Western energy imbalance market trended down or lower than the bilateral prices. Another interesting trend is the price separations across the areas. And that happens because there is limitation there about the transfers or internal transmission constraints. And lastly, these higher levels of prices reflect to some extent the gas dynamics that have been happening not only in the West, but across the US. And indeed, nowadays, we can see that these gas dynamics are pushing prices to a very high levels across the West. This is all the material I have for this briefing. Thank you for your time. I will be happy to address any questions you may have.
Guillermo, thank you. Let me first check with the governing body members. And Jennifer, you have a comment or question.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Guillermo, thanks again for the presentation. Really, really helpful information. Really love all of the diagrams that you put together for these updates. They're very helpful in processing, the increasing benefits and everything else we're seeing with the market. My question for you is on, I think it's your slide 12. It's the curtailment slide. So not this one. There we go. And you cut out a little bit for me when you were going over the slides. So my apologies if you already addressed it and I just missed it. But I think it's really important to note that yes, the as a result of the EIM or partially due to the EIM, avoided curtailments are increasing over time. But as this chart shows us, curtailments themselves are also increasing over time. And so again, if you already said it and I missed it, I apologize. But could you add a little bit more clarity around how we're seeing curtailments increase over time, while also seeing avoided curtailments increase, which is of course a benefit?
Yes, this is a very interesting question. And I would say there are different dynamics in playing a role here. One of the things that are not that visible with this level of information provided is that there are different drivers for the curtailment. Generally, we have other metrics where we are more surgically identifying the reasons, but overall, the curtailments can be driven by either oversupply conditions when we have too much generation against the demand that we have to meet. We have also what we call local or transmission-related curtailments, and these are decremental dispatches on renewable resources in order to address a specific congestion in the system. What we show here in this metric is simply the total volume of curtailment, regardless of the driver. I can tell you that if we were just in isolation in the context of oversupply, we would expect that the level of curtailments could be stable, and indeed it may actually reduce with integration of storage resources. The interesting factor here is that when we unpack one more level the curtailments, the majority of the curtailment that we have for the CAISO area, and that is the dark blue, happens to be driven by congestion. And congestion is a condition beyond the power balance, supply and demand in the system. It's more related to specific transmission configurations, specific congestion, specific patterns of outages in the season. And this is where the majority of the curtailments accrue. So what you see here is that we have an increasing number of curtailments, not only the frequency, but also the volume. It could be due to two main reasons. One is that we have seen more congestion in the system, and naturally that is going to lead to more curtailments, just volume-wise, but also the consideration that we may have also lower levels of demand. For instance, with the penetration of behind-the-meter demand, our demand levels become lower, and therefore we are more exposed to more curtailments. So other factors also influence the condition. Depending on the season, hydro levels may also play a role whether we have more or less curtailments. The story is that there are many moving pieces that could result in a specific level of curtailments. But specifically, I would say the majority of this is congestion driven, and that was higher because congestion was more pronounced in this time of the year.
Okay, I really appreciate those additional clarifications. Thanks, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Do any other governing body members have questions? Okay, seeing none, at this point, I will ask to see if there are any public comments. Follow instructions for making public comments.
If you would like to make a public comment, please place yourself in the queue by pressing the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you're called into our phone-only line, please press #2 to enter the question queue. Moving to our first caller. Caller, you have been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. Please make sure you also state your name and affiliation.
Good afternoon. My name is Kanya Dorland. I'm with the Public Advocate's Office. I was calling to talk about slide 6 a little more. You're saying it follows solar. Could you explain that a little more? Because it's on a different, is that hours? Or that's different days. So if you could explain, like there's higher solar exports on certain days and lower exports on other days.
Yes, let me try to go more granular on the information of this plot. This plot has 3 sets, one for each of the months that make up the calendar quarter, July, August, and September. Each line represents, on average, the transfers associated with each of the balancing areas participating in the market. The pattern I was explaining regarding the solar production and penetration and how that influenced the transfers is specifically relating to the CAISO area. And that is shown with the dotted trend. It is the one that has basically one peak in the morning, one peak in the afternoon, and one dip in the middle of the day. That profile is a very typical and a mirror of the profile of solar production. What is going to happen, and we have seen this consistent in the market, is that when CAISO area has the full penetration of solar production, is going to reach a significant levels of generation available. And that is going to happen typically in the midday hours when we have the full radiance of the available. That means more generation from solar resources. When we have that level of production from solar, naturally the economics of the system is going to tend to take advantage of that low cost excess generation to be able to transfer to other areas that are with not that much in solar production and make an economic displacement. Effectively, solar production from CAISO can be transferred economically to other areas that may be in need of that generation. So if you see the pattern of the transfers, it effectively follows the inverse of the solar production. It's the highest in the middle of the day when we have the highest penetration of solar, and we can afford to have the highest levels of transfers to other areas. As we go into the evening ramp and the peak hours when the solar production declines, the amount of available generation declines, and therefore, naturally, the amount of transfers are going to decline. When we reach the peak time, effectively, the CAISO becomes a net importer. Now we're going to bring transfers from any other balancing area to offset the loss of the solar production. That is in general the trend that we see regarding transfers that involve the CAISO through the day. Does that help?
Yes, that clears it up. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Were there any other public comments?
There are no further comments in the queue at this time.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to agenda item 8. This is our briefing by our governing body market expert on the resource efficiency evaluation enhancements phase 2. Before we get started, Jennifer Gardner plans to make a few opening remarks, but before I turn it over to Jennifer, I just wanted to provide a little build around getting started. So as I mentioned before, this is our first presentation. When we started off down the path of bringing in a market expert upon the recommendation of the GRC, it was along the lines that we would be able to bring the market expert at the beginning of initiatives, and the market expert would be able to provide guidance along the way. When we brought our market expert in, it was this summer. We were in the middle of all the initiatives, and as we put together our priorities, and we had 4, with this being one of them, she was brought in, or as we like to say, she was parachuted in towards the end of the process. So at this point in time, we're not going to have the normal cycle that we expect to see in developing input and interaction and dialogue with our market expert. So we'll see that probably change over time. But as we have her provide guidance under this month and next month, it's going to be on initiatives that were our high priority items and those that were well underway. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rob. Really excited today to introduce Susan to everybody. We've already done introductions for Susan at a prior meeting, but this is really Susan's first opportunity to give a presentation publicly to our stakeholders during a general session of the EIM governing body. Susan's been doing such great work for us, and although the EIM governing body has been benefiting from her expertise, we've also heard from our stakeholders that they want to have more visibility around Susan's role and the expertise that she's providing. And so we've heard you, and we are making a concerted effort to ensure that Susan's advice is, as publicly available as possible. And a part of, meeting that goal is, of course, to have Susan speak publicly during our general sessions where it makes sense to do so. And so today, Susan will be briefing us on the resource efficiency evaluation enhancements phase 2 proposal. We have asked Susan to brief us on two fairly narrow issues of that proposal, although they're incredibly important. The first one is the treatment of HASS LPT exports in the RSE. The second one is the assistance energy transfers proposal. There will be an opportunity to ask questions during the public comment phase immediately following Susan's remarks. So if you have any questions or comments, please hold those until that time. And I believe that Rob will be facilitating those questions should we have them for Susan. So before I turn it over to Susan, I just want to acknowledge that we will have Susan briefing us at our upcoming January 31st meeting. She will be briefing us on 2 of our other priority initiatives that we've asked Susan to research for us. And that, of course, will be EDAM and wheel-throughs. So please stay tuned for those briefings as well. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Susan for her briefing on the RSE phase 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gardner. Good afternoon, Chair Konziolka, other members of the governing body, and all of the EIM stakeholders participating on this call. I'm very pleased to be participating in today's session. So next slide, please. So as Jennifer just said, during the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be presenting my opinions on two priority issues identified by the governing body with respect to the CAISO's revised final proposal for RSE enhancements. These are the proposed treatment of HASP low priority exports in the EIM RSEs, and also the proposed market rules that would apply if a BAA failed the RSE, including the revised proposal for charging BAAs for assistance energy transfers. Next slide, please. So first, turning to the treatment of HASP low priority exports in the RSEs of the CAISO and other EIM BAs. In my opinion, excluding low priority exports that were scheduled in the HASP from the CAISO RSE, while continuing to include them as supply in the RSE of the importing balancing areas, is a reasonable compromise for implementation of an RSE for the summer of 2023. I reached this conclusion for three reasons. First, it prevents the CAISO from failing the RSE due to HASP advisory EIM imports that support low priority block hourly transfers to EIM BAs. Thus, the approach fixes the original problem that was identified, which was the potential for the CAISO to fail the RSE due to low priority block hourly HASP transfer schedules. It's a mouthful. The second reason is that the compromise preserves the EIM benefits because BAAs will be able to include the low priority transfers in their resource sufficiency evaluations, rather than excluding them and potentially failing the RSE. This inclusion is reasonable and desirable because these exports are likely to occur most of the time and decrease almost all of the time and decrease the cost of serving the BA's load. Third, and my third reason is that the proposal addresses reliability explicitly by recognizing that the CAISO will curtail low priority exports when necessary. Next slide, please. So before moving on, I would like to make a few remarks about the reliability implications of the HASP LP export compromise. The result of the compromise is that LP exports will be relied on in the importing BA to serve load, but the CAISO, through its RSE, will not be required to firm up the associated supply for those exports. So while this is not expected to be a problem, except during regional shortages, the CAISO should move forward to implement certain software fixes and improvements to reduce the possible reliability impacts of this compromise. In particular, it should remove LP export bids that have not cleared HASP from BA-based schedules to ensure BAs do not erroneously pass the RSE. And here I'd like to refer you to page 16 of the MSC's December 4th, 2022 opinion that I think is the only place that I've seen where this particular issue is really clearly explained. Secondly, the CAISO should also implement improvements to the FlexiRamp test essential to ensuring intended quantities of FlexiRamp remain deliverable in combination with HASP transfers into the CAISO that support block hourly transfers to EIM BAs. The general point here is that the necessity of the compromise elevates the importance of fixing all other market design or software issues that have the potential to reduce the reliability of HASP schedules. As a final point, I agree with the suggestion made by both the MSC and DMM that the CAISO explore modification of the RSE treatment of HASP LP exports during tight system conditions. In other words, under actual or impending shortage conditions identified by some trigger metric, The RSC should be tightened to reduce the chance of curtailment of LP exports and other reliability issues that might be arising from this compromise. Next slide, please. So I'm going to move on now to the second topic of this presentation, which is the CAISO's proposal for assistance energy transfers. So in my opinion, the EIM market design should support the provision of assistance energy to BAs as an alternative to limiting their imports in the event they fail to pass the RSC. I agree with the MSC that has stated that it would be inappropriate for a balancing area to shed load because it can't schedule emergency bilateral transactions fast enough at a time when plenty of supply is available to be dispatched within the EIM. However, there are substantial issues with the revised final proposal for assistance energy transfers, as I'll discuss on the following pages. Nevertheless, I support the revised proposal as an interim approach. The reasons for my support are that first, it would make assistance energy available at a reasonably principled price for BAs that might be short of capacity next summer. I think it's really a priority for the EIM design to make this assistance energy available. Second, for the BAs opting in, which may not be many except under near shortage conditions, the financial consequences of small failures of the RSC or of mistaken failures are substantially lower under this revised proposal than under the CAISO's prior proposal. And these differences in the financial consequences were explicitly shown in analyses performed by DMM of the two alternative proposals, which you can take a look at. The third reason for my support is that the probable lack of a material penalty for some BAAs that may opt out is the same as under the status quo. After reviewing the analyses of the DMM and the CAISO market analytics team, I'm convinced that it would be extremely difficult to modify the proposal to improve the opt-out penalty in time for implementation in the summer of 2023. In fact, as I'll discuss more in a few pages, my conclusion is that it would probably not be a good use of time to address tightening the opt-out penalty at this point in time. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I briefly recap the proposed market rules for BAs that fail the RSC. And by the way, on this slide, you can see some words in red, and these are just some small edits that I made yesterday as I was reading the presentation through again. I realized I wanted to make a few additional edits and corrections. So those are in the red line version that has been posted, and they're shown in black in the clean version that's dated 12/12. So anyway, summarizing the revised proposal, BAs could choose to either opt in or opt out of receiving assistance energy. If a BA opts out and fails the RSC, and its RTD and FMM imports would be limited to the level set in its most recently passed RSC test as they are today. On the other hand, if a BA opts in and fails the RSC, the CAISO proposes to collect an ex post surcharge. Sometimes I'm going to call that a penalty, but I think the new terminology is surcharge for this, that will be calculated as follows. The cost per megawatt hour for the failure would be either $1,000 or $2,000, depending on whether the soft or hard bid cap is applicable for the settlement interval. The megawatts for which the surcharge would be collected, in other words, the billing units, would be equal to the maximum of the BAA's EIM imports or the megawatt quantity of the BA's failure of the capacity or flexible ramping RSC test in the upward direction. Okay, so the megawatts of the surcharge would be the maximum of those two values. Additionally, BAs could choose to subtract from the settlement quantity their available balancing capacity. The reason for this is because it's assumed that this available balancing capacity would have been used if the BA had not elected to opt in and receive the assistance energy. Next slide, please. So here I briefly describe the motivation for revisions to the assistance energy transfers proposal that were made. This lays the groundwork for discussing whether the issues have been addressed in the following slides. So the revised final proposal responds to concerns about the possibly large magnitude of the previously proposed opt-in penalty, especially in comparison with the relatively low severity of the opt-out penalty. There was concern that the difference in the possible severity of these penalties would discourage BAs from electing to receive energy assistance, even when it could be inexpensively provided by the EIM. Second, there was concern that the difference in the expected cost of the alternative penalties could lead to toggling, that is, going back and forth, a BA going back and forth between opting in and opting out. And the concern that this toggling might be done mistakenly. So the BAs are going to have the incentive to toggle in order to attempt to minimize the penalties that they might incur under the opt-in approach. And they're going to try to opt out otherwise, but they might get their opting in and opting out wrong. So for example, the problem with mistakes is that a BA might not opt in out of conservatism during a period in which it needs emergency assistance, and as a result might have to shed load or might run short of reserves. Alternatively, the mistake could run in the alternative direction as a result of this toggling. So a BA might opt in when it actually turns out that it doesn't need emergency energy, but for some reason it fails the RSC by a small amount. And as a consequence, it could end up paying a substantial penalty charge for all of its EIM imports under the prior proposal. Okay, so these were the downsides of the prior proposal that the CAISO has attempted to address with this revised proposal for assistance energy transfers. The bottom line is that the revision appears to be intended to address these concerns by substantially reducing the expected financial impact of opting in. The reduction occurs because the megawatts subject to the surcharge can be no more than the megawatt quantity of the BA's net EIM scheduled imports or the amount by which it fails the RSC. Next slide, please. So moving on to my concerns about the assistance energy proposal. With respect to opt-out issues, it's clear that the opt-out penalty can have different impacts on differently situated BAs. In particular, it will have different impacts on BAs based on the procedures they use to determine the bids, offers, and schedules for load and supply that they submit to the HASP. For example, the analyses performed by the CAISO and DMM of the September heat event show that the imports scheduled into the CAISO in the HASP consistently exceeded the imports that actually flowed into the CAISO in RTD, including during the intervals when the CAISO failed the RSC. So this result for the heat wave was explained by the CAISO as relating to the load biasing, which is also called load conformance, that it uses to ensure sufficient rampable capacity in the right locations in the absence of this reliability function of locating the rampable capacity correctly being fulfilled by the flexi-ramp market rules. So the problem I see is that the results observed for the September heat event appear to generalize to other shortage situations under the current market rules. In other words, the penalty the import limit sets for opting out BAs that fail the RSC is unlikely to be binding on their imports in the real-time dispatch. So the same opt-out result observed for the CAISO for example, could occur for other BAAs because they could use load biasing to increase their 15-minute market imports, or they could choose to offer their supply at high prices into the HASP to increase their 15-minute market imports and unload generation prior to the RTD. In other words, if a BA thinks it might fail the RSE and is opted out, it could change its HASP bids, offers, and schedules to increase its FMM imports and lessen the chance of the import limit actually affecting its ability to meet its load in the RTD. Next slide, please. So because of the issue identified in evaluations of the September heat event and the need for the CAISO to continue with load biasing right now to schedule sufficient flexible ramping capability, it doesn't appear to me to be timely for the CAISO to put effort into improving the stringency of the opt-out penalty. The CAISO's first priority should be to implement the flexible ramping product so that it ensures the deliverability of required ramping capability. As a second step, the CAISO should determine new rules and procedures for the amount of load biasing needed in the HASP to maintain reliability. After these steps have been completed, the stringency of the opt-out penalty could be reevaluated, and the kinds of analyses that the DMM and market analytics ran could be rerun. And at that point, the opt-out penalty could be modified as needed, or it might not need to be modified at all if the opt-out penalty isn't retained. Next slide, please. So moving on to my thoughts about the revised opt-in alternative. There appear to be advantages to the ex post application of the opt-in penalty. I mean, it's now called a surcharge. It's easy to calculate. And specifically for the CAISO, the ex post penalty increases the cost of only net EIM transfers rather than all imports per the prior proposal. However, the weakness of the revised opt-in alternative is that it is applied ex post. To be specific, with the ex post approach, the surcharge is not included in the software used to run the 15-minute market or RTD dispatches. So these models do not see the high price of scheduling additional imports into a BA that has failed the RSE. As a result, the software can schedule additional imports, which displace existing BA supply, as the CAISO explained in a video conference to discuss the proposal. And because the imports appear to be cheaper than the existing BA supply, this occurs. However, when the surcharge is included, the imports are not actually cheaper. The BAA is going to lose money because the charge for the imports, including the surcharge, exceeds the cost of the displaced supply. Anticipation of this unintended and uneconomic displacement is going to affect the bidding incentives of opting in BAs when they think they might fail the RSE. They're going to be likely to alter their bids and offers. To avoid the displacement, a BA opting in will have an incentive to self-schedule its supply and or offer it significantly below cost so it won't be displaced during the dispatch intervals when it thinks it might fail the RSE. Next slide, please. So while the revised final proposal reduces the cost of opting in, it appears to me that BAs could remain wary of opting in because of possible economic displacement. If they opt in, they're likely to offer their supply inflexibly into the dispatch to avoid displacement by imports when they fail the RSE. But the problem is that this tactic is going to be unreliable, and it's going to be difficult to implement it to successfully avoid undesired surcharges. For example, the BA might unexpectedly fail the RSE by a small amount because of a generator trip or because of a design or a software flaw, and as a result, pay the surcharge for its imports when it fails the RSE, when it didn't expect to fail the RSE and it had opted in. So when BAs opt in, they're likely to be really conservative about bidding inflexibly. In other words, they're likely to bid inflexibly more than is really necessary. But the problem with that is that when they bid inflexibly, their inflexible bids mean that they are giving up the possibility of economic displacement and cost savings when they actually don't fail the RSE. So their RSE means that they can't save money in the periods when they aren't failing the RSE. So anyway, this is a conundrum. So my conclusion is that the revision doesn't appear to eliminate the incentive for some BAs to opt in and out of the emergency assistance program, or the reliability and efficiency consequences of them potentially electing the wrong option at times. Next slide, please. To conclude, I have a few suggestions for the short and longer run, which are aligned with the suggestions made by the MSC and DMM to the best of my knowledge. In the near term, the CAISO should explore the feasibility of decreasing the proposed ex-post penalty price during non-shortage conditions. This surcharge should remain high enough to penalize balancing areas during shortage conditions when the BAs fail the RSE and are materially short of capacity. However, a lower price during non-shortage conditions could reduce the inefficiencies of BAs being cautious about opting in to emergency assistance. They would be less concerned about the financial impacts of opting in and potentially unexpectedly failing the RSE by a small amount. In the longer term, I suggest that during the next phase of the RSE Enhancements Initiative, additional effort could be directed to exploring the development of a tiered ex-ante penalty to be included in the dispatch, which would avoid the displacement problem of this ex-post approach. Here again, I suggest that CAISO explore a lower ex-ante penalty during non-shortage conditions, because this would provide a stronger incentive for BAs to opt in, with the ultimate objective of arriving at a single penalty design, getting rid of the opt-in and opt-out choice. So as a final point, before taking your questions, I'd like to note that the ex-ante approach suggested here would need to be thought through really carefully. Like the ex-post approach, the ex-ante approach could affect economic incentives. Moreover, an ex-ante approach might require some software modifications. And finally, the CAISO and its stakeholders, EIM participants, you should need to make sure that the ex-ante design for the opt-in penalty dovetails well with the design of other market initiatives that are underway, such as the EDAM and in particular scarcity pricing. So that concludes what I want to say in this presentation, Chair Condoleezza.
Susan, thank you for this presentation. I'm certain that there are going to be a number of questions here. I'm going to ask the governing body members if they have any. And first up is Andy.
Thanks, Chair Kanzioka. Thank you, Susan, for your work kind of digging into this initiative and providing your own analysis on it. I found it very helpful. I especially appreciate the observations on the interaction between the kind of load conformance and the RSE and the kind of the inner relationship of those. That's my question on this sort of concern about inflexible bidding that could be encouraged under the framework. Is how big of a problem do you think this might be? And is this something that could be like kind of, monitored, kind of discerned through some sort of monitoring if this is occurring, or would that be challenging to do?
Well, I think that the CAISO, being aware of the concerns I had about the inflexible bidding, did suggest that it was something that it could monitor for. I think that it would be possible to discern how BAs might be changing their bids in relation to when they opt in into relation to when they opt into the assistance energy proposal. So yeah, I do think it would be visible. I'm not sure exactly what you would do about it, because it's in their economic interest to do that in order to, avoid the potential for economic displacement of their imports and paying a surcharge on imports that they actually didn't need, and that are more expensive than their own supply after taking into account the surcharge.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Susan. John?
Yeah, again, thank you, Susan, for this presentation. I appreciate it. I guess just backing up and looking at this a little bit higher level, I think my takeaway is that if this is implemented as proposed in the latest revision, many of the entities would simply not opt in because of the concerns you've raised. And so I'm looking at it in terms of, is there enough good and enough value that this should go through with follow-on modifications in like the phase 3 you talked about? At a high level, how do you think about that?
I think that this proposal accomplishes something really important, which is that it provides a way for balancing areas that have been very explicit about potentially needing assistance energy next summer to get it. And it reduces the cost of any potential, blips or mistakes or relatively de minimis failures of the RSE in comparison with the prior proposal. So if the failure of the RSE is by just a small amount, this assistance energy penalty is not going to be, nearly as substantial as under the prior proposal. However, if there's a substantial amount of assistance energy that a BA needs, it will end up paying for it, especially if the hard offer cap is in effect. So that part makes a lot of sense to me. So it's an improvement over what exists today. So I think that's a good reason to move forward with it. It doesn't fix the problems, though, with the current penalty for opting out, the current opt-out penalty. It doesn't fix that. And I think that's just probably a bridge too far right now. And I think the problem with the current, the stringency of the opt-out penalty today is found in, as Andy was just referencing, the load biasing that's occurring due to the need to fix the FlexiRamp operation. So, I really think that the focus should be, for many reasons, on fixing the operation of the FlexiRamp, and then taking a look at whether or not it's possible to fix the opt-out penalty to really make it have teeth, or just directly move to thinking about whether it's possible to design an ex-ante version of the assistance energy penalty.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John. Jennifer?
And actually, Susan just touched upon my question in her answers to John's question, but so I might get a little bit repetitive here, so my apologies, but I'm really kind of honing in, Susan, on this slide 28, and your recommendations for phase 3. And I realize you just talked about the need to address the operation of FlexiRamp and then take a look at whether the opt-out penalty can truly be fixed. And of course, your recommendation there is this development of a tiered ex-ante penalty to be included in the dispatch. And so I just want to be clear. You're suggesting essentially that we should move to an in-market solution for applying a tiered penalty as opposed to an out-of-market solution, which is what's being proposed right now. So first, I guess I'd like you to, that's what you're proposing, right? The in-market solution.
Correct.
For this. Yeah. And so you mentioned in your remarks that this would be, there a lot of thought would need to be put into this effort. It would require software changes. It would be complex. So I guess this is again a fairly high level question, but in your opinion, I mean, how realistic is it to develop something like this as a part of an in-market solution?
I think it's very it's aligned with things that other ISOs do for other reasons. It's, you know, I'd have to give some thought to how exactly this could work. I mean, this is really the CAISO's design effort, but the advantage of including the opt-in penalty in an ex-ante approach is that it gets the price signal associated with the fact that there was a failure to have enough capacity into the market price that all parties within the balancing area that's failed would see. So generation supply, for example, in the CAISO, would see the higher price that when if the CAISO were to fail the RSE, which provides the right incentive for additional flexibility of supply or additional supply in particular regions, for example, that might be causing the failure. So there's just basically it's all of the efficiencies that you get, which I'm sure everybody has heard many times of, you know, getting the scarcity into the price signal so that you kind of elicit the full, you know, power of the market in responding to the scarcity when it occurs. So I don't think that it's something that is impossible to do. I think it's something definitely worth looking at. I have a particular concern about the possible interaction with scarcity pricing. They get awfully similar in that they're both sending a signal for when, potentially sending a signal for when capacity gets short. So I think that there would need to be an upfront effort to explicitly distinguish the intended objectives of an ex-ante penalty for failing the RSE from the objectives of scarcity pricing market rules.
Thank you. Appreciate that additional explanation.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So Susan, just so you know, I did have some questions, but they were pretty much along the same lines of what John and Jennifer were asking. And my comments would be, assuming were issues that you were just expanding on, assuming there's a phase 3 and it gets explored, how say that for another time. So what I am going to do at this point, unless there's another question by the governing body members, and I don't see any, we're going to move on to public comment. So Gladys, can we move on to public comment?
Absolutely. If you would like to make a public comment, please place yourself in the queue by pressing the raise hand icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you're called into our phone only lines, you can dial #2 to enter the question queue. There seem to be no questions in the queue at this time.
Okay, thank you. Susan, really appreciate your presentation and your comments. I think you know, this is a learning experience for us, and this goes this time, and maybe we'll change things a little bit, maybe we won't. We'll just continue to evaluate how this interaction goes and how it's best to get this information from you to us.
Understand.
Yeah, and I just think this first one went well, and I think you got to the bottom line, at least for me, and I think for others as well, and I think that will help us tomorrow.
Good. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Susan.
Okay, bye all.
Bye. Our next agenda item is number 9, briefing on the WEIM governing body planning calendar, and that will be covered by Anna McKenna. CAISO Vice President of Market Policy and Performance. Anna, are you there?
Yes, I am. Well, good
There you
afternoon, everybody again. I will cover the remaining items for 2022, which is increasingly becoming shorter and shorter, and then take us into a little bit of next year's, first quarter changes that will be coming to you for. So for today, for tomorrow, which is our joint session with the Board of Governors, we will be taking to you as just discussed by Dr. Pope, Susan here just a few minutes ago, our WEIM resource efficiency evaluation enhancements, and those will be under a joint decisional item for you, as well as the Board of Governors, and also the energy storage enhancements. So those are the two decisional items for tomorrow. But also tomorrow is a very important session in which we will be briefing you on a number of initiatives that will be coming to you for in the new year, some of them under joint and some of them not under joint. We'll be briefing you on the EDAM proposal, which of course is our final proposal that was just posted on December 7th and formulated, as Elliot noted earlier, through a quite extensive stakeholder process and close integration and collaboration across the stakeholder community. But we will be briefing you all tomorrow on that, as well as the day-ahead market enhancements and the what lovingly is referred to by Chair Konzioka earlier, I believe, as wheel-throughs, our proposal on the wheel-through initiative as well. And those will be provided as briefings, as I noted. We also will provide you a briefing on the Governance Review Committee efforts on changes to the governance structure. So those are sort of the three briefings we'll be providing tomorrow. I just wanted to note that you don't see it on this calendar because that is part of the joint session. Just wanted to make sure that the community that normally tunes into the governing body meetings also know that that is being conducted tomorrow. So those will be provided to you all tomorrow. And in January and February, and that meeting in January is right at the end of January, right at the beginning of February, we will be starting really actively with you all. Hoping after having given you a briefing tomorrow on these essential items, we will be coming to you for decision on the WEIM governance proposal, as well as a joint decision on the EDAM. And we have also proposed that the day-ahead market enhancements come to you as well as the Board of Governors under joint. Separately, we'll also be asking the Board of Governors for authority to proceed with our wheel-through proposal, which is in front of you as an advisory item. So those are the main items you have to look forward to in the new year as we get started. So hopefully you'll have a nice Christmas break and holiday break so you'd be ready to go. And of course, we'll also have our regular briefings that we conduct during that time frame for you as well that are listed there. So that sort of concludes really the year, as well as starts us off in the next year as to what the items are. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments with regards to our planning calendar.
So, governing body members, any questions for Anna? And it does not seem to be any. I know that we have been very focused on getting through this month with the number of items that we've got. And as you noted, that January 31st, February 1st timeframe. And I think everyone's got their heads down and has had a hard time looking past that. But I do know that in our next meeting, we will be engaging with you on that longer look and where we're going from there.
Absolutely. And we will be also next year taking some time to roll out our next set of initiatives, which we haven't yet done. So we'll be talking to you all about that as well. And you'll start seeing those coming up in planning calendar as we proceed.
Yeah. Now let me go to public comment, Anna. So let's go to public comment on item 9. See if there's any public comments on the planning calendar. Silas,
to make a public comment. Nobody in the public comment queue at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then we can move on. Anna, thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Our last agenda item is agenda item 10, informational reports. So here, as we normally do, there is no planned presentations, but staff is here to answer any questions should the governing body members have one. Does anybody have any? I'm seeing none. So before we move to adjournment, I would like to work with Jennifer. One thing I did not touch on with respect to market expert material. Right now, we have it posted under the area where we have market expert opinions, and then it's posted on today's meeting agenda material. The intent is going forward, as we were working through this ourselves, that we would also get it published where people also look for this material. For example, under the initiatives, if you're going in there, the intent would be to have it posted so that if that's how you normally find all your material, you would find it in one place. And did we also identify another area where it needs to be posted?
So the way that we discussed it, Rob, is essentially where you would typically find a DMM opinion or an MSC opinion. You will also find Susan's opinion as the EIM governing body market expert. So you would find those opinions as a part of a stakeholder initiatives page. You would also find those opinions as a part of our meeting materials. And then I believe those opinions are also shared through the daily digest, Rob, that CAISO provides to stakeholders who sign up for those. So that would be another place where you would be able to access her opinion once it is made publicly available.
Thank you, Jennifer. I know I was missing something and I just could not remember what I was forgetting. So thank you for that. Before we adjourn, I'm going to double check if there's any last items by any of the governing body members. Seeing none, we stand adjourned, and thank you for today's attendance. And for those following, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.